I'm here to talk about how I came to the knowledge of Hashem's glory. Like I said, it's one that I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do because when I spoke about the past, now, in these days, I see the reaction on my family's face. And it isn't always a very good one. You know, but they're always encouraging me. But I see every time they talk, every time I bring it up, it's painful, and I know it's painful. So I never wanted to bring it up, but it's time. It's time to just talk about some of these things, and that was the first thing I thought of: old feelings, emotions. Second thing I thought of, was the statute of limitations on some of this stuff. Had they expired? And did my checking, and they all have. But no, in all reality, God's statute of limitations never expire. They never do. We have to return to Him with those. So I was born in Tucson, Arizona, to my father, Richard C. Ware, and my mother of blessed memory, Irene H. Ware. I have 2 older sisters and 1 younger brother. As far as my mother and father, wonderful people, always there for us. We didn't have much, but I don't even remember going without. Never remembered going without. And as far as religion, to the extent of what I remember as far back as 6, 7 years old when I was putting this together, my religion was, my mother was a witness, and she'd have her Bible studies come over. And that was time for us to go into the room with my father to watch TV for an hour or two. So when the first show was over, I'd send me to the door and check to see if they were gone, And when they weren't, or it was time to watch the second show. And for the most part, that was it. Mother and father shortly after there got divorced. 3 years later, they got remarried. It was awesome. It was great. And after they got remarried, shortly after that, my father he stopped drinking. He drank a little bit, and things were different the second time. Also different is my mother. She didn't let me stay in the room. She asked one of the people at her congregation to come over to the house and kind of work with my brother and I. And that worked for about a year. And then after that, he said he just couldn't do it anymore. I was non-responsive. I was basically inconsiderate. I wasn't, at that time I was 13, 14 years old, and he just didn't want to waste his time anymore on me. Because I literally, that's what I was doing. I was wasting his time. And that was pretty much it, I had this belief. I used to tell everybody that, oh yeah, I believe in God, But one day I will be judged, and I believe you just got to do right by people, and they'll do right by you. But what I was doing wasn't very right by people, especially my family. So my high school years, junior high, I got kicked out of junior high. It was shortly after they stopped giving me Bible study. I got kicked out of junior high. They just didn't want me to even come to the school anymore, let alone any school in the district, because of some of my shenanigans. And I went to the first homeschool. It was called teleteaching. I woke up, called somebody on the phone in some basement of a high school, and they gave me my promotion from 8th grade on to high school. And they said, as long as you don't come to the school, you do this and we'll give you a diploma. for junior high. And I was like, all right, no problem, I could do that. I didn't really like going to school anyways. And we got into high school, and I was a typical teenager, rebellious teenager, I should say that. Typical rebellious teenager. Always trying to fit in, ended up getting in a lot of trouble. And found out the day before graduation I was going to graduate. So I was like, wow, just barely made it. Graduated on a Wednesday, started working. My father put me to work at the company he worked at on a Friday. Started working right away. But just before graduation, I met my wife on July 3rd, 1991. And, that's where I kind of started straightening out from some of the other things I used to do, but, still kept some bad habits. We had 3 children. By the age of 25, I had a family. Up to that point, I thought my responsibility was just to provide. That's what my responsibility was, to provide for them, And as long as I provided, nobody could tell me anything. They couldn't tell me anything what I was doing. If I wanted to have a drink after work, I deserved it. If the sun came up, I deserved it. If when the moon came up, I deserved it. I drank all the time. That's how it was. Every day after day, month after month, year after year, every single day. Living in this little world there where it revolved around me, and didn't pay. As long as I was providing, that was it. And my wife, she put up with a lot. She's awesome. My children, they're great. Well, there came a time where I wasn't providing as much as I had been. And at that point, I decided it was time to go overseas, to go work over there. I had to get out of the house. It wasn't working with me in the house. I wasn't providing as I usually had been, because one job or another didn't work out because of my drinking. And I went overseas. When you go overseas as a contractor, they allow you to come home every 4 or 5 months. And first time I went over, I didn't come home for 7 months. I said, they need a break, I need a break. As long as those checks keep coming in, I'm providing. This is what I'm supposed to do, is provide. So I came home, and didn't take long. My wife and I were at it again, because I still had those same habits. I'd come home, and I deserved it because I was providing. So it basically went like that for another 4 years. I'd go back 3 months later, 4 months later, come back, and we were back at it again. It didn't take long. 3-4 days, 1 week into it. We're given 14 days to be home, and usually right around that 10 days, she was either asking me to go back early, or I was saying I'm going to go back early. That was ugly. No way to raise a family. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has a quote. He has many quotes, but this one stuck with me. It says, the greatest sign of someone who is ill is a person who doesn't know that they are ill. That was me for sure. For sure. I thought everything was great as long as that check was coming in. Well, my wife and I, we had made an agreement for me to go over for 2 years. I stayed for 4. And about a day before I came back, I met some real good people over there, and met a dear friend, Mr. Aurelio here. About a day before I came back, I got this phone call saying, hey, they're hiring in Houston. Do you want to come to Houston? I was living in Tucson, Arizona. I was like, sure. I just told him, yeah, sure. Wherever the wind blows me, I guess. I didn't think I was really going to work over there. I lived in Tucson. Nobody in my family moves out. They stay there. You got family real close. And that's just how it was. Well, I got back, and like I said, nothing changed. Didn't take long. About a week later, my wife and I, we were at it again. And I just didn't learn. I was hard-headed. I was ill, and I didn't know it. So when I got serious on taking my friend up on that offer, 4 weeks later, I ended up here. February 1st, 2012, started working at a company here in town. And my friend was gracious enough to allow me to stay in his home. And while I did that, while I came here on a temporary job, and he was in the church as well, church none that I had ever known or been to. I remember the first time they invited me to go there, and he asked me. He said, they asked me. They said, hope you don't mind anyone putting their hands on you. And I was like, well, no, I'm okay. I won't mind. I'll be all right. But the thing is, what I also found out on the way, it's an all Spanish church. All they speak is Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I look like I speak Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish. So I was like, well, I'll just turn it into one big prayer session, I guess, I didn't know that they stay there all day long. All day long. So, I don't know, it was something else. But you know what? Inviting me to come with him to see to see a different way of life, to see something different. I said, you know what? Okay, I'll give this a chance. What I've done for the last 18 years hasn't worked. Actually, 20 years, 25 years hadn't worked up to then. So I just said, you know what? I went down the street. He always left me his car keys because I only went once, and then every time he got up, he goes, hey, Rich, we're going to leave you the car. You can go anywhere, So I grabbed his car keys. I started going down the road, and I stopped at a Christian bookstore, just picked up a book, started reading it. And in this book, it said that I had a responsibility, other than, I had another responsibility I wasn't aware of. I had a responsibility of being a spiritual advisor in my house. And I'm looking around, I see that my friend's faith is strong. He had just went through some ugly times personally, and, he's staying strong. And I'm like, what did it? It's like I realized it was his faith. So I read this book and I said, okay, the only thing I know is what my mother did is go as a witness. She was a witness. And I said, so I'll try out one of these. I'll go over there. So I called up. I found out where the closest hall was, and I went there. And, very nice people. But as with every other church, congregation, service, center I'd ever been to, nothing stuck with me. I was like, looking around, I was like, man, I'm so uncomfortable. But I went to one there, and then I started going to more services with my friend. And then one day he called me up. We were going to go to a service on Saturday. And he asked me, once he got me in the car, he goes, Richard, do you ever hear Torah? And I was like, you mean the movie? Are we going to a movie? And he was like, no, Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And I was like, no. He said, well, we're going to go to a Torah class, and I had a shirt on. I didn't even own a jacket at the time, but I had a shirt, a tie, and I thought we were going to go to a church service he had invited me to. And I was like, sure, I'm just going to go ahead and keep going through these motions, just something's got to change. Because at this point, I'm here in Houston, My family's in Arizona. I'm on a temporary job. I don't really know where anything is going. I'm just going with that wind. I'm just going with it. I'm like, all right. I'm flying back every other month to go see my kids, see Jackie and see family. So I said, yeah, let's go. So I walk into this Torah class, and there's no seats available, but there's a couple in the front. I'm like, man. And right away, I'm the only one here with a tie. Everyone's going to be looking at me. I hope they don't call on me to read. I hope they don't ask me anything. I was like, fine, I'll sit right here in front, and something happened. Something happened. The only way that I can explain it now, knowing a little bit more, is that it was that spark that lit. Because I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew I had to come back, without a doubt. It's almost like I was more conscious of my conscious when I walked out of that Torah class. Things changed. Things started feeling differently. I'm thinking, I'm like, that's not right. Things I'm saying, that's not right. Well, like I said, I didn't quite understand it, but I knew I had to come back. So I came on back. It was only a couple studies in, and then Ruben gave a teaching on God's name. Why in this class we call him HaShem? And it made sense. And I was like, okay. It made sense. It was like, it made sense. So I was like, okay, I'm coming back. It was on a class by class basis at this point. I was like, I couldn't wait. Saturday was over and I couldn't wait for Wednesday. And I really started feeling this change, this other responsibility, this yearning. I wanted to understand what was in this book, but even though it was still sounded foreign to me. And then right when I was kind of, weighing a little bit, I go to a class and Rod was talking about drinking and that it's not bad. And I was like, finally. Somebody is finally telling me. He had no idea who he was talking to in that class. I was like, finally. And it's out of the Torah. I said, there's no way that my family's they're gonna be okay with it now. That was on a Wednesday. Unfortunately, where was I on a Friday? At the store, buying a 6-pack. And I was going back to the house. At that point, I was living on my own here. It was just before I was going to go pick up my family in June. And I was going to the house. And I realized when I got to the house, I said, that didn't take much. So I know if I open, because already on my way back to the house, it's like, what did I get a 6-pack for? This is going to last me all night, And I get back to the house and I just put it in the refrigerator. Ended up throwing it out the next day because that was really one of the first times that I realized, that I know now, that evil inclination that they're talking about in the class, there it was front and center. There it was front and center. It was right there. That's all I needed to hear. And I went straight to the store. And I realized that is what I need to, that's what I recognize. That's what I need to get rid of. There it is. I see it. It was an awesome experience to finally understand something and recognize it, If few weeks had passed and another lesson came up. It was Pinchas, the lesson on Pinchas. I was like, wow, I think I get a little bit of that. You know. And then again, I got another lesson. It was in Deuteronomy. This one really leveled me. It was in Deuteronomy chapter 30. And chapter 30, verses 11 through 14. And I'd like to read those because they had such an effect on me that it's one of the very first verses that I was able to remember, at least where to find it, because I was always being asked by family and friends back home. Well, I shouldn't say always, occasionally. It's like, oh, those are the Old Testament. Those are the old things. You don't have to do that. None of that stuff. It says right here, chapter 30, verse 11. For this commandment which I command you this day is not concealed from you, nor is it far away. It is not in heaven that you should stay. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will go up to heaven for us to fetch it for us, to tell it to us, so that we can fulfill it. Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross to the other side of the sea for us and fetch it for us to tell it to us so that we can fulfill it. Rather, this thing is very close to you. It is in your mouth and your heart so that you can fulfill it. I was done. That was it. I was like, all right. If anybody tells me anything, I'm going to point them right there, including family. You know, but that's what did it, you know. So my oldest, graduated from high school. I didn't want to bring anybody here without, I couldn't just uproot them and bring them here. My oldest was still in high school, and she was in her senior year. So we waited for them to finish before I went to go get them, and I brought them, that was at the end of her senior year, after she graduated. And it's sad, I would say that I guess the normal course of the way things flow is the child leaves the parents, but in this case it was really hard because we left her. You know, this Pops, who hadn't been around for 4 years, 4.25 years, all of a sudden he gets a job somewhere else and now goes back and says, takes the family away. So it was hard. It was a hard decision to make. But this is where Torah was. This is, for me, this is where Torah was. This is where revelation started coming. This is where I started to wake up. You know, and I knew she was going to be okay. All the family was back home, so we bring the family over. And right off the bat, Jackie was like, I'm not eating certain things anymore. I don't want to eat them. You know, I'm not doing certain things. So it was an adjustment for them. You know, and we started bringing them to Torah class, and you know, just like me, I could see it with her, but she also, there's something happened. So she kept coming back, and it was just wonderful. We've been doing this now for about 2.5 years. And HaShem has really changed our life. It's been the most beautiful thing that has ever happened to us. My wife and I don't argue as much anymore. No, hardly ever. I have a relationship with my kids here and my daughter over there. I can talk to family now. Things are different. You know, when they see this, if they see this. You know, they haven't really seen me, you know, in the last couple of years. They just know that he's doing something different over there. You know, it's pretty sad. And I brought my family over. What really hurt, I was thinking about this on the way over. Jackie and I have been married for about 17 years prior to moving over here. And her mother was torn apart. She was crying, hurt that I was taking her that this guy who is her husband, who hasn't been the nicest, who was who hasn't been the nicest person at all, she didn't trust me. After 17 years of being married to her daughter, she still feared her daughter being alone with me. And that was because she knew it was just a matter of time. Everyone is just, that clock was ticking. Everyone's waiting for me to mess up. But I promised her that day in her house, I told her, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen. Please don't worry. You know, and I don't think, at least I don't think Jackie's had to call home at all to complain, to vent about, you know, me and my shenanigans. Here lately, I've really taken to the breast love teachings, learning with various rabbis online with the Breast Love Institute, learning the Likutei Moharan, how to study it, how to learn it, studying the Torah. You know, it's really, Torah has really transformed our lives. It's lit sparks with all of us, within all of us. It's a beautiful thing to have mezuzahs on our doorposts, to have our Torah and the home, to have experienced Hanukkah, you know, the very best that we know how. You know, it's been a beautiful, beautiful experience. It's wonderful. And I'm going to keep going. I've already told Rod that Ruven, I'm sorry, that I want to start sharing here. You know, he's I want someone to depend on me. You know, now that my family knows that I'm on the right track here. I want to be able to share what it is that I'm learning. You know, with you, with everybody. So I didn't think this was the test, because I'd been telling him that since April, since we moved in here. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. You know, obstacles aren't what they were before. Some of you may know I lost my job, you know, a couple months ago, and I was almost giddy. I was almost happy. Because I'm so excited for what HaShem has in store for me. Everything that happens to us for a reason. I'd been telling HaShem that I was going to, in personal prayer, in Hibaradut, I'd been telling HaShem that I was going to start praying more. I was going to start looking for a job. The writing was on the wall at work that it was going, but I didn't listen. I was going with that wind, for, you know, so old habits are hard to break, you know, so I was giddy. I was like, okay, what's coming next? All right, I got to be prepared for it. I'd heard this teaching saying that before we react to our physical experiences, we need to see where we are spiritually. And that gave me an opportunity that day, waiting for my wife, walking down the road with my backpack and my keyboard and my monitor in hand, and to give this some serious thought. All right, don't react to this physical. Where are you spiritually? You know, and this time off has really strengthened me. You know, has drawn so much strength from the Torah. And now I'm being proactive. I had several people, you know, this community is so wonderful. We really come together and helped, and job offers and resources, and it's been beautiful. We have not gone without. HaShem always takes care of us. Some really, I'm going to call them miraculous things happen. You know, last week, that just freed up some other things that we thought that we were going to be paying on for another 10 months. All of a sudden, they just vanished. They went away. I can't even explain it. The person who I was dealing with, I called because all of a sudden I got a check, and normally I'm sending them a check every single month, and I got a check a couple weeks ago, and I called my lawyer and I said, "What is this?" And she tells me, "I don't know. I can't even comprehend what I'm looking at." There's nothing beyond HaShem. Nothing at all. So I'm excited. Really am. First thing I think of in the morning is Him, More Ani. The last thing I think of in the evening with my family is HaShem with our bedtime Shema. So it's beautiful how this Torah has transformed our lives and our will and our heart and given so much meaning to it. I'd like to end with a teaching from a small quote from a teaching in the Likutei Moharan, section 2, teaching 12, section Aleph. It says, the essence of Judaism is to go in pure innocence and simplicity with no sophistication whatsoever. Make sure that whatever you do, God is there. Do not pay any regard to your own esteem. If something will enhance God's glory, do it. If not, then don't. This way we can all be certain. This way you can be certain you will never stumble. That's how I want to live my life. Thank you. So that's it. Thank you so much. Any questions? I'll take some questions.
But if your children accept the change and going to a Torah or something they maybe not have.
I think very well. They know. There's about a year ago, we were saying our prayers in the evening, and I keep telling myself I'm not drinking soda anymore. Not right now. I'm done with that sugary substances. And I think I drank about 3 or 4 sodas that day, and I'm sitting on the bed, and I said, "Girls, that's it. I'm not going to drink any more. That's it." And I look up, and my daughter has this face on them, just kind of like just complete sad and shock. And they thought I had a beer that day. They thought I drank because of what I said, But I had to clarify to them that it was just soda that I hadn't drank. No, but they've taken very well to it. They're helping Melanie with the teachings on Sunday. They're here when they can be, when they're not working or studying. They've taken very well to it.
What about your family back in Arizona?
Oh, like I said, they don't know too much. They know I'm doing something different over here. Surprise. I did. I did explain to them, and some of the comments I got back was, you don't need to be doing none of that stuff. You don't have to do none of that stuff anymore. Those are Old Testament things, and I was like, well, you got to start somewhere. I'm starting in the beginning and just working. I said, you know what? I haven't got to that book yet. That's what I tell them. I haven't got there yet. I'm still on this book. And at the end of the year, I start over. So I haven't got there yet. That's been my response.
Could you share with everyone what your brother-in-law Rebbe said after you did the blessing of the wine and the bread at Shabbat?
Oh, yes. It's pretty awesome. found Torah or Torah found me on Shabbat. You know, I completely forgot to talk about the first time Melanie invited us over to Shabbat. That is another thing that really changed our life, my life. To sit there and see Rod bless his family and say good things about him. I couldn't get that off my mind. I couldn't wait to do Shabbat. I couldn't wait for it. My family came over and visited to see my Adriana graduate high school this past May. And fortunately, there was a Shabbat in there. And we had a Shabbat at the house, and my brother-in-law was there, and he was able to see me say the blessing over the wine and the bread. And I didn't see him, but I was told that, you know, it was a little emotional for him for a couple years there. You know, we worked together, and not very many wives. I was that husband that none of the wives wanted their husbands to hang out with. None of them. Cousins included, family included. Their wives did not want me hanging out with their husbands, because if I worked with them, you know, some way or another, they were going to be at the bar with me on Friday and on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday whenever we had a chance. So it was, I was with Ribby for quite a few years, and he's seen me at some of my worst times, some of the ugliest times that I've had in my life. And to see that transformation, he was really blown away. Yes?
Yeah, hang out in those bars all that time. Did you ever get any bar fights? You're kind of intimidating. I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think too many would want to pick a fight with him, yeah.
You know,
They'd run.
I used to tell, I had an excuse for everything, you know? And I used to tell my wife, I'm a quiet drunk. What's wrong? You know, what are you upset? I don't bother nobody. Happy drunk, right? You know, I used to have an excuse that said, there's two people who like to drink. There's those who drink to get drunk, and there's those who drink to taste. I like to taste. You know? So I had a lot of excuses. Oh, and to tell you, AA, I tried that many times, mainly because of, I know this won't get recorded. Well, if Brad will cut this out. But I went to it only because it was the probation and rules, and something handed out from the court saying I had to go do this. And my wife, being one of the times of the court, says, you need to do something. So I said, okay, I got to go to AA. But I always had a beer in the car waiting for me when I got out. But it didn't matter. I tried those things. Nothing changed my life like hearing Torah. Unfortunately, yes. To answer your question. Didn't happen too often, but I think I was telling you that other start because I was trying to tell you that I was a happy drunk. I kind of stayed away from all that stuff. You know, I didn't want to, because if the way that I saw it, if I was in a scuffle, I wasn't drinking. You know. Yes.
Rich, there's going to be a lot of people that are probably, you know, once it put it on the internet, that may have a problem like that. Is there anything that maybe you can say to them? Is there anything that maybe you have plans on, maybe even counseling later, help people out?
Oh yes. That's actually something that I'd really like to get into. Helping with that. You know, I don't know. Genesis 1:1. Start at the beginning. That's. I'm still 2.5 years later, even though I understand that it was a spark within us. It's still hard for me to grasp what it was that changed my life, and it was Torah. So my answer to that is, okay, let's start here. Let's Genesis 1:1. You know, it's hard. It's hard. That quote, the greatest sign of someone who is ill is the person who doesn't know that they're ill. That's a tough one. You know, my counseling was Torah.